Okay, hello. This is a really quick tutorial showing you where everything is in the RIO seat. Everything that you need to know, really. Not necessarily everything to know to operate everything, but at least you'll know where all the switches and things are that are necessary to operate the RIO seat. So the first thing you need to go is to adjust your controls. You have to set up the controls for the oh, sorry, this is the pilot. You have to click on here and go to the RIO. And go through here until you get to the HCU hand control unit. For some reason it's separated into two categories, but click on hand control unit. You need to set up, obviously, the directions here for moving it around. This is the hand control unit, by the way. It's the RIO's joystick, basically. And you need to bind full action and half action. Basically, the HCU has a dual stage trigger, so half action is half depressed and full action is completely depressed. Okay. Now, both those different modes are used to do different things, depending on the mode here, which I'll go through these later. So this is, I guess, the main panel for the AUG9. Before I talk about these switches, this is non-functional and this is non-functional. Basically, this is legacy IRST stuff. So is this button, by the way. These are used to do, I don't remember exactly what they do, but basically they aren't used by pilots in real life, so they didn't even bother modeling it, I guess. These are also not used. So this is the DDD. This is basically your main radar screen. This will show you basically the raw information that's coming from the radar, whereas this, the TID, will show you more processed information from the radar, I guess. This is where you switch between IRST, which is obviously non-functional, and radar. This is the IFF button, and these are your radar modes. This is your radar elevation, so you can see that it's searching in 4 bars here. So you can see the what elevation the radar is scanning at whatever moment. And well, I'll go through the radar modes here. So there's 2 main modes. There's pulse Doppler search and there's pulse search. Both of these modes will only display information on the DDD. Now, there's 2 other sub-modes for pulse Doppler search. There's range while scan and track while scan. Both of these modes will give you information on the TID, but they have an inferior range to pulse Doppler search. Range while scan has the second most, or well, it has the most, except for pulse Doppler, and track while scan has the second most range compared to pulse Doppler scan. Range while scan will basically only display targets on the DDD, and it will give you an approximate range to them, but you cannot track the targets. TWS, which there's 2 modes, auto and manual, will display, not only will they display tracks, but you can actually track onto them, or you can hook them, as it's called on here, and it will tell you the range and the bearing, the altitude, and the heading of the actual aircraft. So there's also 2 different knobs over here that you will probably not have to worry about too much, but this is erase. It's basically just these 2 controls are for the screen. Erase just toggles how long a track or a target is displayed on the TV before fading away. Pulse gain, I don't even know how this works, so I'm not going to explain. I don't know how this works, so I'm not going to explain. I'm not even going to bother explaining this because it doesn't really matter. You don't need to use it. When you're in pulse search, tracks that'll come up on this screen will be displayed in, well, they'll be displayed as you'd think. Basically, tracks that are further down are closer to you, tracks that are up here are further away, and these buttons are used to control the range for pulse search. Pulse Doppler search is different. Pulse Doppler search doesn't show you by range on this screen, but rather, and note that the range, you can't select a range in this mode, but rather it shows the closure rate. So aircraft that are further up here are closing faster than aircraft that are down here. These aircraft are not closing. These aircraft are moving away from you, I think. And anything that's right in here, I think, is in the notch filter. So now on the TID itself, we'll come down here. I should mention that if you have a track, like in track well scan, even though it will only display targets in closure rate on here, it will display them in actual range on the TID. So before I go into everything that's on the screen here, I'm going to talk about some of these controls. This switch is very important. This is the weapon control system, so right now it's on. If I right click it, it moves into XMIT, so it's actually sending out radar pulses. Well, except it's not right now because I'm on the ground and it's disabled. This is the TV. So you may as well just leave that on all the time. These are display filters. Apparently this is disabled, I didn't know that. These just disable and enable information being displayed on here to remove clutter if you need to. This just toggles the range of the entire display here. I don't know why the hell you'd ever use 400. I don't know who the hell you're detecting 400 miles away. Note that each of these dashes that are coming from your aircraft, which is right here, each of these dashes are 25 nautical miles long, and each space between the dashes are 25 nautical miles long. So keep that in mind. There's the TID modes here, which is ground stabilized, which basically, this is useful for showing data link things where there might be a data link target behind you, but most of the time you keep it aircraft, or yeah, I guess aircraft stabilized, where it keeps you down here, and you don't move on the screen as you move, versus in ground stabilized, you will move as you fly. There's also attack mode, which displays some attack symbology, which if you have actual air-to-air weapon selected, and then you have TV, which shows the TV on here. So most of the time you leave it on AC stabilized. Coming down here, you have the HCU modes. So you have TID cursor, which enables you using the HCU to control a cursor on the TID. DDD cursor, which enables you it's only used for a very specific feature in pulse search, which you will mostly never use. So instead, you would use radar mode, which uses which actually uses the cursor on here and uses that to lock targets on here. And then you have TV, which allows you to use the HCU to move around the TV. So to enable using the cursor, usually press half action, and then, you know, move it in a direction like this. And when I release the half action, it snaps back into center. In TID cursor, you press half action, it gives you the cursor here, it allows you to move it around. And if you press full action, it will track onto a target, or hook. Hook is the word used for for when you track onto a target in F-14. Now, I'm doing something fucking weird where I'm moving around the waypoint. I don't actually know exactly how that works, to be honest. But so you would basically just hold half action, move it over a target, press full action, and it would track on like this. It gives you information where it tells you the range, magnetic bearings, which I guess is your bearing to the target, and then it cycles. So after a few seconds this will cycle and it'll change to display altitude, and it will display the heading of the aircraft that you locked onto. I should also mention, range while scan doesn't tell you the heading of an aircraft. Only track while scan will tell you the heading. So that's what you need to know to use these modes. I guess I should mention RDR will give you a cursor like this, and this enables, well, it's called super search, where it's searching in between the two little bars like that. And then you press full action on a target and you lock onto it. You also, there's some controls over here. Stabilized, this is horizontal stabilization, so in, which is what it's normally set to, is horizontally stabilized on the horizon. Out is just, it's not stabilized, it's just tracking straight out the nose of the aircraft, basically. VSL, I don't know how this works, but it's some sort of auto acquisition mode. Azimuth scan, if I put it, it's already in pulse stopper, is the basically the degrees in azimuth that you're searching. And then elevation bars are, well, you can see here it changes the how many bars that the radar searches. So you can see it's set to 6 right now. You also have azimuth center, which allows you to move around the azimuth, the center of the azimuth. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can see what it's doing. And elevation center moves around the center of the where you're scanning, like this. So useful if there's someone way above you, or if there's someone way below you, or if there's someone really close or something that's above you or below you. Those are the pretty main functions of the radar. This is your waypoint mode, so these are a couple of different special waypoints that I don't fully understand yet. And then you have 3 programmable waypoints where you can put in the coordinates. As far as everything else you need to know, there's the cap, which is the computer, basically. I'm not going to explain how to use this. You should probably just watch another video, because it is a ton of different functions that you can do. The main one that I think most people use is, well, nav, or not nav, where is it? TAC data. It allows you to enter waypoints like this. I'm not going to explain how, because it's actually a bit convoluted. But target data is the most simple and most commonly used one, where if you lock onto a target, you hook a target. Sorry, I'm in the RIO mode, TID mode. You track a target. You can set it to friendly if you do IFF and you know it's friendly, or you can set to hostile if you know it's hostile, or you can set it to unknown in the middle. Simply just by tracking onto a target and just pressing one of these buttons. I'm trying to think what else I need to explain. I don't think there's a whole lot. Oh, over here, this is your air-to-ground selection mode. I'm not going to go over that because I don't really understand this yet. I haven't used it at all. And these are your jettison things here. So basically, you can flip up these switches to select what pylons you want to jettison. This switches between jettisoning weapons Or this also jettisons the rack, I think, but the rack isn't used on the F-14. They never used it, so you just keep it down to weapons. And this selects between the 2 fuel tanks if you want to jettison them. To actually jettison, so say I have these pylons set up to jettison, you click on this thing to take the safety off the jettison, and then you right-click jettison, and it will jettison whatever you have selected. Only if you have Master ROM on, though. Down here, there's a missile speed gate, which I don't really understand. There's next launch mode, which I'm not going to explain because I'm not going to explain it. And then here's a couple of modes where this mode up here, Sparrow Pulse Doppler. Normally when you fire a Sparrow, it switches to pulse mode. It guides it in pulse. If there's some reason where you need to guide it in pulse Doppler, then you can do that. And Phoenix active means that the Phoenix immediately goes active as soon as it fires. So normally you keep it in normal. And this is the launch button. It'll be lit up if, you can actually launch it. If a missile's actually selected, Master Armor is off and everything, then you can just launch it like that. And that's basically everything you need to know to use the radar and everything here. Okay. This part of the video is going to be a real quick explanation of basically just showing you what it looks like when you use these different modes. So right now I just started up this really shitty mission that I made that just basically it's just a clusterfuck of friendly and hostile aircraft just out there. So right now it's in trackball scan, and it's tracked a bunch of targets down here on the TID, and you can see that the search bar or whatever the hell it's called on the DDD has picked up these aircraft. And keep in mind that this is sorted based on closure rate. So these guys I'm closing on, and these guys are sorted by range, obviously, as you'd imagine. So I'm gonna unpause it. I don't know why TrackAir is fidgeting. So you can see that a bunch of targets are coming up on the DDD here. So if I press half action, I can move around the cursor. I can... Oh my god, I'm gonna lock the fucking TrackAir. You can press full action over a target, and you can see that... Oh, whoops. You can see that it's cycling between range, bearing... What, did it just stop cycling? Okay, the altitude and their course. So if I switch to just RWS, you cannot track onto these targets, but it will tell you the range, which you can see the range just by looking at the marks. So this is 25, this is 50, and then this is 75. So this guy, for instance, is about 75 miles out. And Rangewell Scan only has the advantage over TWS, basically that it just has a longer detection range. Pulse Doppler search only displays targets up here. So let me just I'll just decrease erase so that they stay on here for longer. Am I in slow-mo? Oh, I'm in slow-mo. That's why it's looking like that. Alright. Now I'll switch to pulse search. Now you can see those are ground pickup. Range about 100 maybe? I might not be picking them up because I might be higher than them, and pulse search hates being higher than shit because it ground returns. Although I feel like I should be picking them up, but whatever. But this is actually sorted by range now. By the way, I'll explain the difference between TWS Auto and TWS Manual. In TWS Auto mode, it will automatically select, independent of what you have set, oh my god, down here. It'll automatically select the best elevation bar search and the azimuth scan. just based on, you know, like where it's picking up the most targets, what it thinks the optimal settings would be. And TWS manual allows you to have a limited amount of allows you to basically you can only switch between 20 degrees azimuth scan and 4 bars, or 40-degree azimuth scan and 2 bars. If you do anything other than that, it will default to 20 degrees and 4 bars. So, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what I should do next. Oh, I have to show, these two modes are single target track. So this is pulse and this is pulse Doppler. So there's two ways to enter single target track. There's technically a third way using the pilot seat, but in the RIO seat there's two ways. In TWS mode, if you track onto a target, and then you switch to one of the single track modes, it'll track onto it. I should mention that if you press half action again while you're locked on, it will switch back to TWS and to lose a track. So I have this guy hooked. If I don't want him hooked again, just press half action somewhere else, and that'll untrack it. The other way is to, I don't know why it's shaking so much, to go to the radar mode and track a target like this and press full action on it, and that will put it into single target track, although for some fucking reason it just freaked out. So there, now it's in single target track. Now the next very important thing is IFF, which is this button right here, which will display IFF information on this screen. So if I press IFF, it will, again, it's kind of weird. I guess IFF switches to pulse mode, but it shows this in range. So you can see these are IFF no response, and these are friendlies that have the funny 2 bars above them and below them. So this shows your IFF responses in range. Another way you can do it is also by tracking onto a target. So, sorry, I have to switch back to TID mode. Jesus fucking Christ, Track AR, what the fuck are you doing? TID. And now I track onto a target like this. Now if I press IFF, it will show that target in the very center of my screen. Oh, of course I chose someone who I lost immediately. So if I press IFF, it will show the track target in the middle of the screen. So you can see that that's a hostile target. It doesn't have the lines above it or below it. So if I keep moving around, that's hostile. Jesus Christ, stop. That's friendly. You can see it has the 2 bars above him. I think that's it. I think that's all. Whoops. I think that's all you really need to know. I should also mention that you can launch phoenixes into targets in track while scan mode. One second. Let's switch to the pilot seat. Select phoenixes. Yeah, that's great. Turn on master arm and switch back to this seat. You'll see extra bit of information. You'll see that there's a little number to the right of all of these targets. That number basically is what the computer decides is the most is the ordering of the most dangerous targets, and it's the order that they will fire the phoenixes on in track while scan. So this target that I already have tracked, although it's irrelevant to what I have tracked, is decided that this is the #1 target to fire upon. So you don't even need any targets tracked. All I need to do is just press the launch button and it'll launch a phoenix on that guy automatically. Now if I want to manually select somebody to fire phoenix on, you can track them So say I want to go on after this guy who's going to be the third guy. If you press next launch while he's tracked, it'll set him to the maximum priority. So I can now launch a Phoenix on him. And you can see that the this is basically time to kill. I don't need to explain that. I should also mention that this number, you don't have to worry about this number. This literally does nothing. And this number just cycles just to show you that the computer is still functioning. Forgive me for being stupid, but I actually forgot what these do. I think this is the set radar elevation. But I'm trying to mess with it, but it's not changing because it's in TWS Auto, and you can't change it in TWS Auto. So that truly, I believe, is it.